anything you do, if that passion kind of comes through to other people, then that's what can help honestly take your business to the next level. Yeah, so the first business we can talk about is Wholesale to You apparel, or WTU apparel. Basically what we do is we specialize in garment decoration and printing, embroidery, promotional items, things of that nature. Have been doing it since 2010, just part-time. The business was started just as trying to solve a problem. We had kind of had a previous conversation before, a little bit about how a lot of times businesses are born or started out of trying to solve a problem. And that problem was, I was just trying to find, at that time I was working for a company where I had a bunch of basketball teams, and so I needed jerseys and always needed apparel. And so I was just trying to find something that was consistent and being able to get to me in a timely fashion. And so I just kind of started learning through researching YouTube videos and stuff, how to do garment decoration, things of that nature, and began the process of it, which kind of led me to, doing it. And obviously in the beginning, when you do anything, you're not very good at it.
Right.
So it was a lot of trial and error of just getting used to the equipment, getting used to how to do things properly, messing up a lot of garments, the typical things that you go through when you start something new. And from that process, it led me to being able to, have my teams wear the stuff, and then other coaches and people would ask, hey, who did your stuff? Oh, I did it. Kind of branch off to people saying, hey, could you do something for me? Which then would lead to other people who had businesses asking, hey, could you make me sweatshirts, things of that nature. So that's kind of how the concept was born. From about 2010 to I'd say about 2017, so about 7 years, it was just very part-time gig. Because at that time I was, like I said, I was doing a basketball thing. And then I also DJ on the side. So I was doing weddings and events and stuff of that nature. So I was trying to juggle basically 3 jobs at once.
And you're still DJing, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. I still do.
We'll throw some info in there for.
Yeah, I still do some. I've actually DJed since 1999.
Okay.
And I've scaled way back from what I used to do. But I still do events, primarily weddings and corporate events.
Okay.
Right now. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of the gist of, like I said, trying to juggle these 3 things. And then when 2017 hit, I stopped working at my previous job, and then at that time my daughter was being born. So it kind of forced my hand to go full time into and put all my energy into the apparel company. And just like anybody who is starting anything in the beginning, I was under the impression, again, to just kind of crawl before you walk. So it was something where I was trying to do a lot of gigs and a lot of jobs out of a garage, for many years. And then eventually got to the point where I was really nervous about getting into a commercial building, because obviously you have a lot more overhead. But the funny thing of how faith kind of works is I went to a seminar, and it was actually a free seminar. It just popped up on my Instagram. So I ended up going to a seminar, and the seminar was like, hey, come learn about business opportunities, blah, 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 blah. So I was like, okay, let me go check out what's going on. And the free seminar basically led to a paid seminar, which I paid to go to. And the lesson from the paid seminar is sometimes you got to step out and just kind of have faith if you want to scale your business and take it to the next level. So that seminar was a 2-day seminar. It was Friday and Saturday, and by Monday morning, my business partner had called and checked up and found a spot. And so obviously in the beginning I was extremely nervous about going into, a spot after being in a garage for so long, because you're just comfortable.
Right.
There's no really added on expense as far as that kind of stuff goes.
Right.
But was able to make it work. And then a year after, got into the spot, moved into another spot, which was about twice the size, because had outgrew the first spot that I was in.
The conference you went to that was free, was that like you went to one and then you were like, oh, this is good stuff, and then there was another paid one that you went to?
Yeah, so it was a free seminar. It was from Damon John from Shark Tank.
Oh, okay.
And they were at the Convention Center Hotel.
Okay.
There, and so I went there just to check out the information.
Yeah.
Because I'm all about gathering as much information as I can get to see if there may be something in there that could be helpful.
Yeah.
And in doing that, they had some more kind of like advanced coaching that you could get after the free seminar. And so in that, it taught a lot of different like business strategies and things that made me think outside of the box.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, the seminar had nothing to really do with the field that I was in, but it was all applicable to being able to grow any type of business.
Right. Even like, I was just thinking, like, even their model of this conference where it's like, hey, we're going to give you something at no charge, and then they get you in there, and then it's like, oh man, like I'm kind of liking where this is going. I might pay to, I mean, even that's something to be said about business models and getting people in the door because I wonder if the first one would have just been paid. You said it just popped up.
Right.
Like, would you have went and paid for it as opposed to where you're like, well, it doesn't cost anything. I might as well check it out.
Right.
And then you check it out and it's like, oh, dang, that they could go deeper. And then you look at that, you pay for that. You hear some new stuff that's kind of outside of the way that you were thinking about. Then you call on a place, get into that place, outgrow it in a couple years, and then you're in a bigger spot. And had you not taken that step to get into that first spot, that's just interesting. Taking that first, especially that first, leap of faith that, hey man, we're gonna give this a go.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I would even kind of go back further to like, to just kind of understand and talk about like the struggles and the mental aspect of just like kind of where I've came from to where I've gone to where I'm trying to go.
Yeah.
I just remember growing up. I grew up in Northeast Portland, and I just remember in growing up in Northeast Portland in a kind of impoverished neighborhood, you never even had a dream or a thought about being an entrepreneur, because that just seemed out of your realm. Owning a business, being a business owner. So if anything, if there's young kids out there that have dreams and aspirations of owning a business and doing bigger things, I would always say never let your situation kind of define who you are. Because again, I mean, like I said, in growing up, I grew up where I grew up with my grandmother, and my grandmother's day job was basically cleaning houses in Lake Oswego, for upper echelon rich families.
Yep.
And so for me, I would see my grandmother go to work. She would work hard every day, hands and knees, scrubbing people's floors, and still come home, make dinner, hold everything down. So that's what I knew as being hard work. I knew at a young age too, though, I also knew like it was hard for me to work for other people sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I kind of remember hearing the story about like Michael Jordan, and they were like, man, they knew at a young age he'd never have a job because he just was never meant to kind of be like an employee.
Yeah.
You know, so for me, I always try to keep an open mind growing up too, is like every situation that I was in, I was always trying to challenge myself and go, what can I learn from this situation?
Mm-hmm.
So whether it was, you know, I used to work at Wonderland, and then I became, my senior year, I became a manager at Wonderland. And I just remember looking at systems, and I remember looking at how things worked. How do they make this work? How do they get employees? Man, okay. And then I would look at it and I would really record in my mind what I liked about some of the systems, and if I could change it, what I would change. And so I'd always kind of keep these things kind of tucked in the back of my mind to where just one day, if I happen to have a business,
Yeah.
these are kind of some things that I could pull from.
Yeah.
And then when I went on to go to Western Oregon, I remember having a job at Western Oregon University where I was a building manager. And I just remember telling myself, I was like, at first I was kind of on the lower end of that job. And I just remember it was a monotonous job where it was just setting up rooms, conference rooms, tables and chairs, breaking down and setting up rooms. There was like 6 rooms at the Warner Center that needed to be kind of changed over from conference to conference. And I just remember going, in my head, I was always challenging myself and going, how could you make something that's so boring and so monotonous, like fun? Like, what would I do if I was in this position of the person who's in charge of me? Because at that time, students were in charge of students. And so when I first got the job, like the person that would be my supervisor would just basically come down with the blueprints and say, hey, set all this stuff up, and then just go back up to the computer and sit there. And then we'd set the room up, and they'd come back down and go, man, you didn't set this up right. You know, and so I always wanted to be somebody that would be like, okay, if I had that position too, man, what I would do differently is I would go and work with my crew. And I would want to play music and make it fun. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't seem like it's just setting up tables and chairs.
Yeah.
And so when the position opened up, I applied for it. I got the position. And then I made it a mission for me whenever my crew was there. Hey, I'm coming down there. I'm setting up chairs and tables with them. We'd have music going, buying them snacks after, you know, shifts and stuff like that, just to kind of change the dynamic of the work environment. So I still use that to this day in WTU Apparel with anybody who works for us and works with us, I should say, not for us, but with us, is it's always just kind of a fun, friendly environment, like a family environment, to where we want to take something that's known as being monotonous and boring and make it fun. We want you to be in a position where you look forward to coming to work, not dreading coming to work. So again, it's just all about creating these certain environments.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's easy for all of us, for the most part, with like what we do, it would be easy to say, oh, this is just making screen printing or just doing insurance or just doing whatever. But I think there's, something to be said in terms of adding more to it and trying to make something that seems monotonous. How do you add it to lead, people, and I mean, almost get them to kind of think the way you're thinking, where back when you were just setting stuff up, you were like, well, what else could I do to add to make this where it wasn't just setting up chairs, and inspiring that thought process. Right. 'Cause you never know, the people that, work with you, they might want to grow in your company, or they might go start another company, right. But just kind of helping get that mindset of, this isn't just screen printing. It's not just this, you can add so much more to it. I like that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about empowering, because again, you go through different things in your life, and you're put in different positions in your life, and you never know which way things are going to take you, because life is all about choices, and kind of going back to, like the grandmother piece is like, she played a very significant role in my life. raising me in the church, doing all these different things. And then at the age of 14, I saw her pass away of a heart attack. So that was kind of the first adversity I had ever really faced in my life, is when you see somebody who's there every day, who's been there for your entire life, and then pass away right in front of you. Is pretty traumatic for a 14-year-old. And there was literally like a week left in my 8th grade year when it happened. And so I was making that transition from from middle school to high school. So that was, very life altering for me, from a perspective of, I would say from the age of 14 to 18, I didn't have the normal childhood like most people had. I was forced to be more of an adult at the age of 14.
Gotcha.
So when I was, I had the choice to go to Grant High School or Benson High School, because Grant High School was my neighborhood high school. But I didn't really want to go there. It was nothing against the school. It was more, that's where all my friends were going, and a lot of my friends that were going there were up to no good. So I was like, man, I got to take a different path, because I know if I go this way, this outcome might not be good for me.
Yeah.
And so I chose to go to Benson. And I just remember when I went there, I had a hard time, in the beginning, because I didn't know anyone. All my friends were at Grant. So again, it was another transition period for me. I'm sitting here still trying to deal with the loss of a loved one, but then transition into that kind of awkward adolescent stage where, I've always been more on the reserved, quiet side. So I'm not really outgoing. So I'm not just going to make a lot of friends just from going up to people and, hey, how are you doing? So yeah, it was definitely, a transition period for me, going to high school after dealing with that, and then being kind of casted, because Benson isn't like it isn't a neighbor, for people that don't know, like Benson isn't a neighborhood high school. So it's a school, it's a technical high school that you have to apply to go to.
Okay.
And so you have to be accepted to go there. And then when I went there, I used to have to catch the city bus to get to school.
Okay.
So again, there's that. And then after school, I had to work. A lot of other people were like, you're 14, about to turn 15, you go to high school.
Yeah.
You're goofing around, whatever, with your friends after school and all that. And it's like, man, I got to go to work.
Yeah.
And then in the summertime, I'd have 2 jobs, so it really forced my hand to be a lot more mature, like at a younger age, and just open myself up to kind of more opportunities, and dealing with that. And, I really didn't understand, like, I was talking to, one of our employees who just actually had dealt with the passing of her father-in-law, and then her grandpa just passed away. And I was explaining it, just even in dealing with sometimes with stuff like that, about just being able to get help. Because sometimes we don't think that we need help, and we just try to deal with things, and then it just kind of grows with you as you get older, and you didn't realize, man, by me not talking to anybody about it or getting some help with that, how it affects you in the long run. And so it was crazy, because that kind of segments me into, like, I would say, like, the next part of my life and my journey was just trying to find myself still after that. And so again, I was always like, that's what kind of brought me into the DJing aspect, was after my grandmother had died, my stepdad and my mom kind of moved in, and my stepdad was a DJ. So he kind of introduced me to the DJing aspect, which I loved, because I've always loved music, but I didn't know anything about DJing or mixing music or anything. And so he taught me a lot about that. And it just, like I said, it just built yet another business opportunity, though.
Yep.
Because you just never know, like, again, when these opportunities are out there, I would always say, like people would say to me, they'd be like, man, if you do something that you love, it's not a job. It doesn't feel like a job. And for me, I would still say that, like, when you do stuff and you're passionate about it, then it doesn't feel like a job. It's easy for you to get up and go do that, or it's easy for you to spend, 4 or 5 hours editing up some music or something before an event and not get paid for it, because it's not about the money. It's about the passion that you have for something. And I feel like if in anything you do, if that passion kind of comes through to other people, then that's what can help honestly take your business to the next level. And always being authentic and just caring about people.
Yep. Yeah, man. To that point, sheesh. I would say this podcast for me, like, I've always heard that, like, if you can find what you're passionate about and somehow do that, it won't feel like work. And I would say this is the first time. I mean, I'm 40 now, and this is the first thing I've started to do. And in the last couple of months, I've put some hours into this thing. But it's different, though. It just feels different because I enjoy it so much, and I enjoy speaking with people and hearing their story, hearing what they're passionate about. It kind of like fuels me as well. And I think for the first time, like, I can really say that, like, finding your passion makes it feel different. I've
Right.
always heard it, and I've done numerous different jobs, and I wear other hats as well. But this, and I'm kind of assuming, like, the DJ, when you're doing that kind of stuff, is something that you're like, man, yeah, some stuff I don't get paid for. Like, so, I'm grinding till late at night.
Right.
But so passionate about it, and it's just a different feeling. And for me, this is like the first time that I can really, like, speak on that and say, you know what? I'm starting to believe that. I'm starting
Right.
to believe that. Like, I have found something that I really enjoyed doing. Quite frankly, I've put in quite a bit of money into this, and I'm not sure when or if ever that will return. But I really enjoy doing it, and look forward to continuing to do it, and can really finally say, man, I'm starting to buy that. Like, for people to find, like, not, don't look around what other people are doing, because I've done that a lot too.
Right.
Like, what are my friends doing? And honestly got caught up a lot in that. Like, man, how did they know from college? Like, they're still doing what they did right when they got out of college.
Right.
Like, how did they know that? And I think I really got stuck on what my people are doing and all the success they're finding, and feeling like, why am I not finding that same kind of success? And now I'm seeing it's like, because I was focused on the wrong thing. Like, I needed to look inside of me and figure out, like, what am I really passionate about, and then just go after that.
Right.
And this would be the first time I could say, like, man, I finally found something that I really enjoy to do. And I can endorse that whole, like,
Right.
hey, it feels differently.
Yeah, and I would say, you doing something like this is, to kind of piggyback that, is all about energy.
Yeah.
And I know, just from talking to you and from knowing you, how long that I've known you, is just like, when we talked about, and you told me about your vision about the podcast and everything, I already knew it was going to be a hit, because your energy and your intention was in the right place.
Yeah.
That's another thing I would also preach to people, is like, make sure that when you do something and it's a passion, and it's something that you really believe in, do it not just because of money. Because I feel like the money will come and the things will come if the energy is right and you're doing it with the right intention. Because again, we've all been caught up into doing something, and it's like, oh man, I'm gonna do it because I'm gonna try to make all this money, and then it doesn't work. But then the minute you change your mindset, like, I just remember, even with having WTU apparel, my mindset was like, man, I don't want to go make $1 million selling shirts. How many jobs can I provide for people? How can I help change somebody else's life? So the more shirts I can bring in, the more people I can hire, the more people I can put on, the more people I can help out. And I feel like if I continually always keep that authentic energy of having it be about, man, what can I do to help you enhance your life? And in return, it enhances my life. You know what I mean?
Bro, that's man, that's the gold right there.
Right.
I mean, and I'll say, for me, I think what I'm realizing is I've had the wrong intentions, or I thought I was something that I wasn't. and not really allowing like what I really am to come through, and then to figure out like where do I channel that. Because with this whole idea, it was, man, this could like, I'll talk about other people and what they're doing and put them on, and just the energy back and forth, and then who they know, and such, and talk about foundations and how can charity and that kind of stuff. And it's felt so different from other ventures that I've either attempted or that I'm currently doing. Because I would say this is the first one where I went into it solely on like how can I help others. And I've watched a lot of different podcast stuff over the last couple months trying to really like figure out this space. And there's one dude that I track with, and he's big time now. He's interviewing, super famous and whatever. But I checked out his Instagram like a week ago or whatnot. I went like years back to kind of see what was this dude doing 4 or 5 years ago when podcast wasn't the thing to do. And he was interviewed, and the interviewer asked him, said, "Hey, we've heard you answer the question of people asking you should they start a podcast." And he said, I thought your answer was interesting. And it was like in front of a bunch of people. And he said, will you share that answer? And the dude said, yeah, I typically tell people not to, unless they are willing to do it for 3 to 5 years and consistently, like put something out like weekly for 3 to 5 years, which that's a grind. And more importantly, do it because they feel as though they have something that can help the community. Not like, how can I make some dollars, but I feel like I have something that can really help the community, whether it's mentally, physically, like whatever it is. And if you can put those things together and really go after it, you might have something. And I think all the stuff I've tried to get into before, I don't think I saw it that way. And this would be the first thing where it was like, how can we put on everyone else and raise everyone at the same time? And it definitely it has a different energy. And I'm already seeing how things are coming back indirectly from that. And it's nice because you do get tired, you do put a lot of energy into it, but it's refueling you at the same time. And so, yeah, man, that's like what you're saying, like for people out there that whatever they're doing, if they can have that kind of mindset, I mean, honestly, and keep that mindset, like that's how you win.
Right. Absolutely. And I mean, trust me, it's not easy.
Nope.
You're going to go through good, bad, and different times just in life in general. I mean, we've all gone through good times, bad times, and kind of like, again, moving forward with talking about the business, and it was funny because I told you we got a bigger spot.
Yep.
But the funny thing was, right after we got a bigger spot, COVID hit. So then you have to deal with a whole another set of issues. But again, it's all about how you look at it. Some people look at it as an issue, other people look at it as an opportunity. And so I tried to just sit there and shift my mindset and look at it as an opportunity to like, man, there's a reason all this is happening. Sometimes I feel like, we get so caught up in society in things that really don't matter, that we lose track of things that do matter. And so COVID was an opportunity for the world, not just a community, but the world, to have to sit back, stay home, spend more time with your family, reassess your own life and the things that you have been doing up to that point, and decide what's really important to you. And it was crazy because during that time I was thinking, man, how can we reinvent ourselves? Because I'd say 80% of our business was based upon sports teams and schools. And neither one of those two things were going. So when those two things aren't going, your
Oh,
business
man.
isn't going.
Yep.
You know, but those bills don't stop.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to figure out, you know, a way to make it. And if you and what I really feel like, honestly, like I said, with energy is, if I sat there and said, man, I felt bad for myself, let my energy get low, and just started complaining every day about how bad my situation is, nothing's going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
But I really tried to sit back and look at, okay, man, are there some systems, some new systems I could implement to make my business better? Are there some things that I could do to make my business, man, while everybody else is ramping down, can I ramp up? Even though I know it might cost me money and no money's coming in, is this a chance for me to get a competitive advantage? Like, these are all the things that I was circling through my mind,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And then, as you know, while we were in the middle of the pandemic, I actually got hit with COVID. And so it was a total game changer, because I got hit with the worst part of COVID, which almost took me out. You know, so it was definitely, you know, going back to that mindset thing was, it was either I was basically faced with that same situation and that same opportunity. Was like, okay, man, do I succumb to this and give into it and just give up because I'm in such bad physical condition? Because I don't know if anybody's ever lost 30 pounds in 2 weeks, but it's not ideal. It's not the ideal way to lose
Bro,
weight.
I'll never forget when Hildebrandt was like, bro, I saw him like a couple weeks later and he looked like a completely different dude.
Right.
That's wild.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, I couldn't walk. I couldn't get out of bed. Couldn't breathe. You know, it was, but at the end of the day, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't change anything. Because I have another buddy, you know, everything is about perspective. If that's one thing I can bring to this interview today, is just perspective. It's like, no matter how bad you might think your situation is, someone's got it worse, and you can look at that as being an opportunity to be better. So out of that situation of me having COVID, actually, I created a foundation. And the foundation was basically created in my grandmother's name, because my grandmother spent the majority of her life just giving back to people, being selfless, not selfish. So it sat me down when I had COVID and made me think, man, you know what? You're not doing enough. You know, that's the conversation I had to have with myself, because I'm like, man, there's so many people out here that need help. And I sat there and watched my grandma week in and week out growing up go take meals to people who were in wheelchairs, people who were sick, visiting, spending her time with these people, you know. And so it's like, I need to do more. And so with the foundation, I had COVID in October, started a foundation in October, and had an event in December, where we gave out Christmas toys and clothes to people in need. And I will tell you, it was the most fulfilled I've been in years, of seeing these people smiling and being so appreciative, you know, for receiving a little bit of help.
Yeah.
And it was just that spark of energy that I needed to be like, okay, now I feel like I'm finally on the right path of doing the right thing. How can I do more? And so that's what I'm always asking myself, is how can I get involved, and how can I do more? You know, and so currently right now with the foundation, we actually have an event coming up on Sunday, August 7th, which will be giving away back to school backpacks for kids in need.
Okay.
At the shop.
Okay. At your office.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So that's at W2U Apparel at the shop at 2909 22nd Street Southeast.
Okay.
And the event will start at 2:00, and you can go to, I'll give you all the information to be able to put on the thing for the podcast, but it'll just be at jettylemac.org, where you can register for the event, because it's a registered event, and register and get a free backpack full of school supplies.
Okay.
And even if that's just a little bit to take the stress off, you know, a few families, again, it's well worth it.
Yeah.
And I know it's just a small part, but I'm just trying to do my part and eventually make it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I have bigger plans and goals with the foundation to make even bigger impacts.
If anyone listening or watching wants to donate to that, how do they do that?
So again, you can go to jettylemac.org, the website, and you can donate. Or at our shop, we have like a thing where you could bring in school supplies, clothes,
Okay.
things like that. A buddy of mine was nice enough at Better Built Barns. He donated a shed for us to be able to hold the clothes.
Okay. Awesome.
And stuff of that nature. So
Okay.
yeah.
So people can literally, if they want, just go buy some supplies, swing by the shop, and then you guys will put it in.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
We'll put it in the backpacks.
Okay. Sweet. I was just thinking about that in terms of perspective, that you were, because obviously we've talked offline, and you're the person. I've never personally known someone that got hit harder by COVID, like you almost died. And it's interesting that you say that during that time you felt like you weren't doing enough, and because you chose to have a certain perspective.
Right.
You know, you could have chose to have a different perspective, and yet your perspective was, I'm not doing enough. It was, man, my buddy, which was that the guy I met at the shop, that really got hit with it, because he's going through some stuff too, or was that a different buddy?
Oh, that was a different buddy.
Okay.
Yeah.
But your perspective was like, man, my buddy got hit as what? Like, it's interesting that that's where you turned. Like, in probably the roughest part of your life, I mean, I can't imagine something worse than like you couldn't breathe. You couldn't, remember you say like just walking across the room, you felt like you ran a marathon. And during that time is when you thought, I need to give more. I mean, that's, it's just an interesting like idea of like, I'm wondering like, where did that come from? Like, was that grandma coming out? And
Well,
like, where did that come from?
That's more like just self-development and just working on yourself. So I've been pretty consistent, I would say, for about the past 15 years or so on personal development. I'm just trying to work on myself and be better, because the initial reaction is when something goes wrong, either it's in a personal relationship or something, for you to go, man, it was that person's fault. Man, it's that person. But a lot of times it's hard for us to take a look in the mirror and go, well, what role did I play in something not being right?
Yeah.
So I always try to look at myself and try to go, okay, this is where you messed up. How can you get better? And it was funny because before I got COVID, I had actually listened to this podcast from this guy who had gotten like to this really, really bad accident, and he was supposed to be paralyzed. And he ended up coming out on the other side being fine, but he talked about his mindset. And then after he had, been paralyzed after this bad accident, then he got cancer. So he had two horrible things happen to him back to back, but his perspective stayed positive. And so I just remember laying on the floor, proning, trying to breathe when I had COVID. And I just kept telling myself, I was like, you know what? This is only temporary. And so that helped get me through it, because I was like, it's not permanent. It's just temporary. So every day or every second longer I last with this, it's going to be one step closer to me getting better. Instead of me having the opposite perspective and going, man, is this ever going to end? Man, oh my God. And then I was lucky because, my partner was sheltering me from a lot of the negative information, because when I had it, I would say 2 or 3 people that she knew and people around that passed away. And so it was very terrifying for people around me, that they were scared that I wasn't going to make it. But they did a good job of sheltering that from me, so I didn't have and go down that negative path of thinking that way. Because a buddy of mine, a really good buddy of mine right now, is he's going through cancer, and this is his third bout with it. And you know, he's a really good buddy of mine. He put everything in perspective for me, because I was like, he got his third. When it came back for the third time, he still had the same perspective. He was like, yes, it's back, but I'm just gonna deal with it. And he was like, because why am I less deserving than anybody else to have it? You know what I mean? And I looked at him and I was like, wow, that is a interesting perspective to have, because he's like, you know, I'm no less deserving to have it than anybody else. So I got it. So now I'm just going to deal with it and do what I got to do to deal with it. So I think when we go back to energies and things like that, you kind of attract and hang around people who have the same type of energies as you do, which helps you get through those difficult times.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be a health issue. It can be a personal issue, whatever. You just always have to have yourself around those people that want to see you succeed and want to see you be better.
Yeah. And that's who I met at your shop, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And you said we got to have him on.
Yep.
It sounds like he's got a story.
Yeah.
And a great perspective.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing, is like I said before, is like with this podcast, if there's anything that comes out of this, is just that. Just keep a positive perspective no matter what you're going through, and things will improve.
Mm-hmm.
We've all been there. If you keep a negative perspective, you'll attract negative situations.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of how the universe works.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so again, I just want to be out there, and I just want to be a positive part of the community. Like you said, you being able to have different people on from different professions, sometimes people in the same professions. Mm-hmm. But it's not a competition.
Right.
It's a thing of knowledge where we're all trying to bring our own unique perspectives to stuff, to where when people are watching it who maybe are or aren't business owners, maybe that person is out there right now listening to this that's on the fence about starting their own business, but they don't have the confidence.
Right.
And they're using some of those excuses. Like, man, I came from this poor family. I came from this. I just debunked all of that.
Right.
That it doesn't matter where you come from.
Right.
You can still get to where you're going.
Yep.
But the most important thing is you have to surround yourself around people, and surround your daily personal development around that same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, cut out the negative stuff and introduce yourself to more positive things, and more positive things will happen for you.
Yeah, when you were talking about like some people listening or watching, and as the audience grows, one of definitely my intentions that I hope happens as people listen and watch stories of others is realizing that we're probably a lot more similar than different, and the struggles and the feelings that we have. Like someone that's on the fence of like starting something, you know, you talked about your background, and you know, like you didn't have anyone giving you the roadmap or showing or building a company saying, hey, just take it over. And, you know, that same person might feel like, man, I'm so nervous, or I'm so fearful, but I bet Gary wasn't. I bet Trav wasn't. But the reality is like we all felt those same kind of things. Like, should I branch off and start this thing? Like, I got a consistent paycheck here. I could just stay here. And people sharing their stories to realize, man, a lot of this stuff we all felt the same way. Or, you know, someone did have a similar background as me, and because I don't have that same background as you, and I would never feel that way because I was brought up differently. But the more and more people that are on and share their story, you know, there's people out there that they'll relate to that story and maybe be like, man, maybe I should try, or maybe I'll reach out to Gary and talk to him offline and, you know, tell me more or more detail. That's what I really hope comes of all this, of people just sharing their story, is I think the more that you hear from people, the more you'll realize, man, I got more in common than I thought. And it's not, you know, someone selling insurance, or someone's, you know, pressing shirts, or someone's building homes. That's not the commonality. It's all the obstacles and struggles that to get there that is the commonality and the feelings and whatnot. And, that's what I'm really after with this. And, yeah, I mean, your perspective on it's just a trip that you got hit as hard as possible. Also, I mean, personally, but then your business, you had moved into the bigger shop, and the majority of, the stuff you do is a lot of like sport and kid related, and all that stuff shut down. And it's just amazing that you were kind of like, well, how can I ramp up? And now I'm seeing you. I mean, the last time I was in your shop, you got a new machine in there. You guys were working on the bazillion shirts you were trying to get done at the time, but it seems like things are rolling.
Yeah, I mean, definitely just very blessed and you know supported by a lot of good people. A lot of good friends, which I consider family to me, and just a lot of good people of just I think in anything, especially when someone's starting a business, the only thing they're looking for is an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're our own worst enemies, right? So I just remember it's like somebody might say, "Hey, man, go talk to this person over here." And you're like, "Man, I can never go talk to that person. They're never going to want to use my service. I'm just this little business over here." And we have the tendency to diminish ourselves.
Yep.
And put ourselves down before someone else even puts us down, which again can destroy a lot of opportunities for ourselves. So, there's something to be said about that person that gets knocked down and that can keep getting up and going knocking on someone else's door and hearing no and no and no until it leads to that yes, because that one yes could lead to 5 more yeses in a row. But a lot of times what ends up happening is person hears that no and they get discouraged. And one other thing I kind of wanted to throw in with that, the sad reality about it is, I'm sure a lot of people that start businesses can relate with this too, is a lot of the discouragement and non-support sometimes comes from the people closest to you when you first start something. And it's hard to digest when you think, man, my loved one doesn't even believe in me and I'm trying to do this. But again, that's where it goes back to that self-development and surrounding yourself around other like-minded people.
Yeah.
If you really want to be successful, the blueprint is out there, is just go find somebody that does what you do or what you're looking to do and just be around that person.
Yeah.
And soak up as much information as possible that person has to give. Like they always say, go find a mentor.
Yep.
Find somebody that can help you. So when those times do get hard, you have somebody that you can call. You have somebody that's going to be in your corner, somebody that's going to encourage you to keep going. Because it's very easy, especially in today's day and time. Like, I mean, with us, it's a little different because we come from sports backgrounds.
Right.
We both played basketball, things of that nature. So competing is nothing new to you.
Right.
But let's kind of step outside of that realm. Let's say there was somebody who had never played sports and they started a business. And then next thing you know, they found out 5 other people started the same type business that they started. Well, a lot of times, some people can just get discouraged right off that alone. They'll be like, oh, man. And again, we've been so conditioned as a society to where it's like, oh, man, those other 5 people just started a business too. They're competition. Well, do they really have to be competition?
Right.
Why couldn't you call up those other 4 companies and figure out how you guys could sit down together and take over the world?
Right.
Instead of always being so divided and just thinking about your common goal.
Right.
Which again, like I said, comes back to this podcast of you providing a platform for people to talk about their businesses and their situations and things of that nature, to hopefully be able to reach people and encourage them that they can make it happen too.
Right. Yeah. 2 things on what you just said. The competition thing, it's interesting. I don't know if I've thought about that. What's funny is when I was hooping, like when I was younger, it's interesting how when I looked at competition, like it never, like I expected it. And then I thought, well, I'm going to be better. Even if it's just on this night, you might be a better player than me, but I'm going to be better tonight when we play against each other. And it is interesting getting in adulthood and starting businesses, how it's actually healthy. Like that having other businesses out there pushes you to be better, pushes them to be better. Yes, this podcast, I'll have other insurance agents and we'll hear about their business and their journey. Because honestly, if you really want it, there's enough out there for you with whatever space that you're in. Um, the bigger thing, and actually I want to get your thoughts on this, because a buddy of mine, JB, and one day I'll have him on here. He's down in California, and he's an administrator and doing great. Won some awards, actually national awards for athletic directing. But he just released a book. He's written some curriculum. He's been doing some speaking engagements, and he's been big in my life for encouragement, especially with this podcast. He'll give me good constructive criticism, but he champions me a lot. But one thing we recently talked about was, it's interesting when you are starting something, and it does seem like a lot of people in your circle are almost the last to get on board. And we talked about how like this book that he wrote, he sent like me and like some of the fellas in the circle like the first copies. And I remember saying to him, I read it and I was like, dang, like that's a really well written book. Like almost surprised that one of my boys wrote a book that well. And we talked about how it was like, why am I viewing it that way? Like I could have read that same book from someone I didn't know, and it wouldn't have been like, wow, I'm surprised you wrote such a good book. It just would have been like, that's a great book. Like, wow. And him and I, we talked about like that there's this dynamic that a lot of times that people close to you, are, I don't know, more skeptical, more, and maybe it's because they've seen you at your worst. Maybe it's because they've seen you in the past. But I think for people looking to start businesses, it's actually a good piece of advice with what you're saying is, there might be people close to you, and don't take it too personally if they're not really on board with you. And that you might have to go seek other people that are going to encourage you or mentor you. But it does seem like there's a dynamic of when you're starting things or trying to do things where some people close in the circle are like, we'll see. Will we really stick with it? But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that dynamic, or if you have felt that with when you started different things. I know I have with different things I've started where I thought like, oh, well, of course there'll be a client. Like, that's my guy, that's my whatever. And they're not, and it's like, I would have thought they would be the first ones to be like, well, I'm buying this insurance anyways. I might as well throw it your way. Like, that's just my world, my space. But I'm curious if you have felt that in your space.
Yeah, I would say I felt more like that, honestly, when I ran a basketball program than I do when I run an apparel business.
Okay.
I've been lucky enough to have like friends that are good enough in my circle that really stand behind me, support me, try to put me on with their friends and things of that nature, which I'd really truly appreciate. And that's one thing, like I always try to make sure that I reach out and tell people thank you, and things of that nature. But when I had the basketball program, I did feel that exact same way, because I'd have buddies and stuff that had kids, and like you said, I'd be like, oh, I know they're gonna come play for me because those are buddies, and then they go play for someone else. But going back to that mindset and perspective thing, okay. So I remember one time I had these super high hopes for a guy playing in my basketball program, and kid had been in my program, and then his dad calls me the day before tryouts were supposed to start and told me he was pulling him and taking him to another program. I had put in a lot of time with this kid, had done a lot of stuff to help him and his family, and it hurt me personally. But I had to, again, step back and go, I know this guy isn't intentionally doing it in a malicious way to hurt me, even though it did hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Because I am human, but I had to look at it and go, you know what? Really what this guy is doing is he's doing what he thinks is best for him and his kid. Mm-hmm. And as being a dad, I can't fault him for doing that. People around me were trying to get me kind of revved up and like, man, you know how people do. They'll gas you up and try to get you upset and things of that nature. But once you learn to again, not take everything so personal and be able to sit back sometimes and just take a breath and go, all right, man, this person did this. It's okay. In due time, it'll be all right. They did it because they felt like it was the best for them to do in that situation. Mm-hmm. Because we've all had those times with friends where you've gotten in arguments, things of that nature. Maybe you guys don't talk for a while, and then you come back around and you talk, and you're like, man, that was silly. We didn't talk for a long time.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, as long as you stay true to who you are and know that in everything that you do, you really are coming from a good place and you're trying to help someone, mm-hmm. then you can move forward in your life knowing that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And so take that same perspective and know moving forward now, like you said with your friend, if any other friends come to you, now you're going to be more aware.
Right.
And be like, man, why did I say, I can't believe he wrote that book like that instead of,
right,
yo, dude, I'm proud of you. I knew you had that in you.
Right.
Uplifting, being that uplifter.
Right.
Because if the role was reversed, you have to look at it like, what would you want to hear from that same guy? If you wrote the book and he told you, hey, man, I can't believe you wrote that.
Right.
A little part of you would be kind of insulted.
Right.
And be like, man, what? You think, you know what I mean?
Right.
But at the end of the day, he wouldn't be doing that on purpose to hurt your feelings. Right. It's just the first initial raw reaction that came to him once he read that.
Right.
So really that was just a raw reaction. You weren't trying to dog him or hurt his feelings. You just, you weren't impressed with the work that he did.
He had never authored before. Right. So it was a new piece of, like, I know he's one athletic director of the nation.
Right.
So I know he kills at that. But I definitely caught myself, I thought about it even before I approached him about it when I talked to him about the book. I had already thought man, why is it that I'm thinking John wrote this book, dang, this is a really good book, as opposed to, I expect him to write a really good book.
Right.
And just kind of that, I don't know, the psychology of that. And him and I had a good conversation about it. And he has felt that same way with, but like you say, there's always another side to the story. And just like we're illustrating now, I didn't say it to be hurtful.
Right.
That's just how I initially felt because at the time, that's the information I had to play with. Mm-hmm. So now, moving forward, if he writes another one, I'm probably going to be like, hey, this better be a banger because you've already done this before. But the perspective you're saying, if someone can keep that, you won't lose if you can keep that perspective. With what you're saying, you know what? He was just doing what was best, what he thought was best. And I'll say early on in my insurance career, I did take stuff personally. Now, doing it as long as I have, I understand, there's numerous reasons why. Some people are like, I don't know if I do want to do business with my friend in the event something gets a little screwy and then we lose a personal friendship over a business deal. There's a lot of different reasons that. And so now it is what it is, right? There's plenty of fish in the sea. You just keep doing you and not taking things personally. Right. And understanding that, hey, most people are doing what they just think is best. And part of this podcast and getting people's voices out there is also to kind of just illustrate that, where everyone's really just, at the end of the day, most people are just trying to do their best, and they're not out to get you. And, we're all trying to figure out this life thing. And all of us, like, we learn from other people. I mean, you say, like, I got on YouTube. I mean, think about that. Like, you literally just were like, hey, screen printing, embroidery on YouTube, and that started a business for you because some person back a decade ago posted some videos about, that. And all of us learning from each other, and having something to learn or teach or whatnot. That's really what I'm hoping this thing turns into, where it's just this one big conversation of, yeah, we do different things, but there's a lot of similarities too, and there's a lot of struggles. And how can we make each other better, and how can we encourage each other? That's really where I hope this goes.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your energy and kind of your mindset. Because I know we've known each other for a while, but more just like I knew you because Hildebrandt knew you, and you guys were boys.
Right.
But I definitely appreciate your outlook, and we need more of that. We need that stuff to spread. There's enough negative out there.
Yeah.
That we could always use more.
Yeah, we got
positive perspectives.
We got to provide that balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said something about kind of like where you're at, where you've been, what you're looking to do. Is there any like in the next 5 years, what are you hoping for the foundation? You hoping to grow your business? Are you good with the size, or do you want to grow? Like, what are some of those things?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as far as the apparel business goes, yeah, I would definitely, just keep growing slowly but surely. But I never want to outgrow to the point where I can't provide good customer service.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have good customer service, then why are you in it?
Yeah.
As far as the foundation goes, I'm definitely looking to take that to the next level. I'm looking to provide lots and lots of different services. I was on the phone today with a lady who was providing some incredible perspective and just had my mind blown about some things that I could do with the foundation. And so I was super pumped and excited about being able to help all the way from kids in elementary school all the way up to elderly people with the foundation, and providing different things and resources and stuff out there.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, I always try to look at it from a perspective as if, let's just say I go outside of your door right now and there's a 18-year-old kid out there and he's strung out on drugs, he's homeless and everything. If I just 5 years before that, he was 13 years old. If I could have got to that kid through my foundation when he was 13 years old, could I have saved him from being where he's at 18? Just by providing him some resources, providing them some emotional support, things of that nature. So it's like there's plenty more stuff that can be done.
Yeah.
And so I'm just super excited about trying to get that kind of stuff done and being a leader in that kind of category. Because, like one thing I always wanted once, even though the foundation hasn't been going that long, but what I always wanted to represent was, you hear these things where like, hey man, donate to this foundation, but where's the money going?
Yeah.
So I always wanted to be transparent about, hey man, if you donate money here, this is going to really go to help someone.
Yeah.
It's not going to be something that just goes into a black hole and doesn't get used properly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sorry about the long answer, but.
No, that's good. What did you say kind of, if you are, because I mean, you're so busy, I can't imagine you want a ton of DJing gigs, but what's kind of the sweet spot again for DJing?
Me, I do a lot of wedding and like corporate events.
Okay. Wedding and corporate events.
Yeah. Yep. Just had 2 events this past weekend, actually.
Oh, really? What'd you do?
I did a retirement party.
Okay.
And then I did a wedding on Sunday, which was 2 days ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. Man, you stay busy.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, it's funny to sit here and talk to you about it and think about it, but I think one of the reasons I get so much joy out of DJing too is because, again, we talk about energy and vibration. When you see the smiles on people's face when they're dancing and things of that nature, their vibration and their energy is high.
Yeah.
And even if it's just for that 2 or 3 hour period, you can get somebody to that level of happiness. It makes it, again, fulfilling for you.
Yeah. 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 Man, well, I appreciate you coming by. We'll check in down the road and see how everything's going. And we got to partner on some stuff. Actually, I got some ideas. Yeah. And we got to make the chair hoodies too.
Yeah. Well, I just appreciate you having me on. Like I said, it's a great platform, especially for people in our area.
Yeah.
Starting off and letting people talk about, their business, and most importantly, like you said, just the journey to get to where they've gotten to.
Yeah, man.
So
I appreciate it.
Yep.